Let's talk about the 4 mistakes that are going to get you killed. Not might, will. Because knowledge without action is just expensive entertainment, and I'd rather you survive than become another cautionary tale whispered in survivor camps about that guy who had everything except common sense. This countdown isn't about gear. Any idiot with a credit card can buy supplies. This is about the invisible failures, the psychological traps, the tactical blindness that transforms prepared people into victims. These are the mistakes that make your $40,000 bunker useless. These are the errors that turn your survival plan into a suicide pact. Let's start the countdown. Mistake number 1, the fortress fallacy. Hour 72. The grid's been down for 3 days. Your bunker's holding strong. Reinforced walls, hidden entrance, the works. You're feeling pretty good about yourself, aren't you? You executed the plan perfectly. You got your family inside before the chaos really kicked off. You sealed the door. You're living the prepper dream. Day 5. You hear something. Voices outside, multiple people. They're not just passing by, they're searching, systematically, house by house. And here's the thing about bunkers. They're invisible until they're not. That disturbed earth you thought you camouflaged so well, it screams something's buried here to anyone actually looking. That ventilation system you need to, breathe, it's pumping out air at a different temperature than the ambient environment. Thermal imaging cameras, which every decent police department has, meaning every wannabe warlord looted one, turn your hidden fortress into a Christmas tree, lighting up the neighborhood. And there you are, sealed in your metal box while they start digging. Or worse, they don't dig, they just camp out. They find your air intake because it has to be somewhere, and they wait. Maybe they're friendly, maybe they just want to talk about sharing resources. Or maybe they light a pile of wet leaves over your intake and smoke you out like a rabbit. Congratulations, your fortress just became your tomb, and you paid a contractor $20 an hour to build it. The fortress fallacy. Here's what nobody tells you about defensive positions. Static defense only works when you have overwhelming force, unlimited supplies, or guaranteed relief coming. You have none of these. The military understands this. It's why they abandoned fixed fortifications after the Maginot Line became France's most expensive joke in 1940. The Germans just went around it. Your bunker has the same fatal flaw. It can't move, it can't adapt, and it broadcasts your location to anyone paying attention. The physics of siege warfare hasn't changed in 3,000 years. The attacker chooses when to engage, how to engage, and can simply wait you out. Time is on their side, not yours. You've got, 3 months of supplies if you're really well stocked? They've got forever. They can leave, resupply, come back. You're stuck. Every calorie you burn, every drop of water you drink brings you closer to the binary choice. Emerge and face whatever's waiting, or die inside your expensive coffin. The psychology is even worse. Bunker mentality isn't just a phrase, it's a documented phenomenon. Extended isolation in confined spaces leads to depression, paranoia, and impaired decision-making. Your kids will start screaming, your spouse will question every decision. You'll start making mistakes because your brain literally isn't getting enough stimulation or varied sensory input. Meanwhile, the people outside are moving, adapting, forming groups, gathering intelligence. They're getting stronger while you're getting weaker. And here's the real nightmare scenario: human waste. You planned for water and food, but did you plan for 3 months of sewage from 4 people? That's 360 gallons of liquid waste alone, not counting solid matter. Where's it going? You can't pump it out. That requires power and creates evidence. You can't store it all. That's a biohazard that will make your bunker uninhabitable. Commercial bunkers have complex sewage systems that cost more than most people's cars. Your DIY setup, you're going to be living in your own filth by week 3, and disease will kill you faster than any outside threat. The fix: mobility doctrine. You don't need a fortress, you need a network. Multiple caches, multiple locations, none of which are permanent residences. Think of it like a drug dealer's operation because they understand operational security better than most preppers. They don't keep everything in one spot. They have stash houses, safe houses, and drop points. You need the same strategy. Create 3 to 5 cache locations within a day's travel of your primary residence. These aren't bunkers, they're hidden supply depots. Bury waterproof containers with supplies in locations only you know. Forest preserves, abandoned properties, rural areas with low traffic. Mark them using navigation coordinates, not physical markers that others can find. Each cache should have enough supplies to sustain your group for 2 weeks: food, water purification, medical supplies, ammunition, and tools. Your primary shelter should be mobile or easily abandoned. An RV, a boat, a well-maintained vehicle with sleeping capacity, something that lets you relocate when a position becomes compromised. The military calls it maneuver warfare. Never be where the enemy expects. Never stay long enough to be pinned down. When the situation deteriorates in one area, you move to another cache location, resupply, and adapt. Establish multiple exit strategies from your home base. Not one back door, 3 different escape routes, preferably including one that doesn't require a vehicle. Practice them with your family at night, in bad weather. Time them. Know exactly how long it takes to execute each route with full packs, because when they come, and they will come, you'll have minutes, not hours. Create a communications protocol with trusted allies, and we'll talk about who you can actually trust in mistake number 3. Not a survival group that meets at someone's house and talks about hypotheticals. A network of people with complementary skills who know how to make contact without electronics. Dead drops, coded messages, pre-arranged meeting points on specific timelines. Old school espionage techniques that work when the grid is down. Remember the road. Viggo Mortensen's character survives because he keeps moving. The cannibals with the fortress in the basement, they stay put and they become victims when a larger force shows up. The book's entire philosophy is brutal but accurate. You have to keep moving, you can't stay anywhere too long. Cormac McCarthy understood something most preppers don't. In a collapsed society, mobility is survival. Or look at the Fallout games. The most successful survivors aren't the ones in Vault-Tech's sealed bunkers. Those turn into horror shows. It's the wanderers, the traders, the groups that move between settlements. Static positions become targets, raiding opportunities, or tombs. The game designers understood the fundamental truth. Your bunker is a resource to be exploited, not a sanctuary. Your fortress isn't a sanctuary, it's a trap you built for yourself. Mistake number 2, the lone wolf delusion. Week 2. You made it out of the bunker before it became a tomb. Smart move. You're operating mobile, hitting your cache points, staying ahead of the chaos. And you're doing it solo, just like you planned. Because people are liabilities, right? They slow you down, make noise, have needs. You've read all the forums. You know the statistics. In disaster scenarios, groups fracture, people betray each other, alliances collapse. Better to be alone. Better to be the mythical lone wolf, self-sufficient and answerable to no one. Day 18. You're sick. Nothing dramatic, just a fever, some gastrointestinal distress. Probably that water you purified from the creek, or maybe that canned food from the abandoned grocery store that had a tiny dent you ignored because you were hungry. It's not bad yet, but it's getting worse. You need to rest, but you can't. You have to maintain security, gather supplies, keep moving. You're doing 18-hour days because there's nobody to split watches with. You haven't slept more than 3 hours straight in a week. Your cognitive function is degrading. Simple decisions take twice as long. You start forgetting why you moved your supply cache to the second location. Was it the old water tower or the grain mill? Day 20. You're delirious. You didn't see the group coming because you were too exhausted to maintain proper surveillance. They're not even hostile, they're just desperate. And they're more alert than you are because there are 5 of them working in shifts. They take your pack, your weapons, your supplies. They leave you alive because you're clearly dying anyway, and they're not murderers yet. And there you are, alone, sick, stripped of resources, 3 weeks into the collapse. Congratulations, Mr. Lone Wolf. You lasted longer than most, but you're still dead. The coyotes will appreciate the meal. Here's a biological fact that destroys the entire lone wolf fantasy. Actual wolves don't survive alone. Study after study shows that solitary wolves have mortality rates 3 to 5 times higher than pack wolves. They starve, they get killed by prey animals that fight back, they die from injuries that a pack would have protected them from. The lone wolf is a myth perpetuated by people who confused independence with suicide. Lone wolves in nature don't choose solitude. They're typically young males temporarily separated from their pack during territorial disputes, and most of them die trying to rejoin or establish their own packs. Human beings are even worse at solo survival. We're not apex predators. We're pack hunters who evolved to succeed through cooperation over hundreds of thousands of years. Every advantage we have, language, tool use, complex planning, abstract reasoning, requires social interaction to maximize effectiveness. Language literally evolved because groups needed to coordinate hunts. warn each other about danger, and transmit knowledge. A lone human doesn't need language. A lone human is just a confused ape. You know what happens to humans in extended isolation? Charles Lindbergh hallucinated after 30 hours alone over the Atlantic. One of the most capable, mentally disciplined men of his era started seeing phantom aircraft and angels. Prisoners in solitary confinement develop psychosis in weeks. Astronauts in space, despite choosing their isolation and being trained extensively, report profound psychological distress. Your brain literally needs social interaction to function properly. It's not a preference, it's wiring. Deprive your brain of social input and it starts generating false input to fill the void. Hallucinations, paranoid ideation, magical thinking. Right when you need your mind sharpest, it becomes your worst enemy. The math is simple and brutal. Sustained survival requires approximately 6 hours of security watch per person per day. You can't survive if you don't see threats coming. 4 hours of food procurement, hunting, foraging, or maintaining traps. 3 hours of water collection and purification, boiling, filtering, monitoring sources. 2 hours of shelter maintenance, repairs, weatherproofing, sanitation, and 2 hours of equipment repair and planning, maintaining weapons, tools, and strategy. That's 17 hours of critical, non-negotiable tasks. Even if you're superhuman and can operate on 4 hours of sleep, which you absolutely cannot sustain long-term, sleep deprivation impairs judgment faster than alcohol. You're still 3 hours short every single day. You're constantly running a deficit, and that assumes nothing goes wrong, you never get sick, you never get injured, you never need to relocate quickly, and you never face a security threat that requires sustained alertness. Let's be specific about what goes wrong. You get injured, a twisted ankle, a deep cut, or something worse. Now you can't gather food effectively. Now your security watch suffers because you're limping and in pain, affecting your alertness. A partner could take over food gathering while you rest and heal. A partner could cover your security watch while you recover. Alone, you just deteriorate. You get sick, which you will because you're immunocompromised from stress, malnutrition, and sleep deprivation. You can't decide whether to push through or rest. Too much rest and you'll starve. Push too hard and you'll die from your illness. A partner can make that call for you. A partner can cover your critical tasks while you recover. Alone, you collapse. Then there's the psychological factor. After 2 weeks alone, your perception becomes unreliable. You'll start seeing threats that don't exist, movement in the darkness that was just wind, sounds that were just animals. You'll also start missing real threats because you've become sensitized to false alarms. You're paranoid and complacent simultaneously. A partner keeps you grounded. A partner calls you out when you're spiraling. A partner notices the real threat while you're mentally tired from tracking 10 false alarms. Now let's talk about skills. In any realistic survival scenario, you need medical knowledge, mechanical repair, weapons proficiency, hunting, trapping, foraging, water purification, food preservation, navigation, communications, construction, basic chemistry for various tasks, and ideally psychological group management skills. Even if you're a jack of all trades and most prepper forums feature people who are masters of none, you're still a master of none. The person who trained for 2 years in wilderness medicine can set a broken bone correctly, knowing exactly which way to splint it to prevent nerve damage and ensure healing. You, watching YouTube videos, will set it wrong and create a permanent disability that makes your subject useless for survival. The real mechanic can diagnose an engine problem by sound, can fabricate solutions from scrap parts, and knows the physics of why things work. You'll strip the bolts, break components that can't be replaced, and waste hours on dead-end repairs. Competence compounds in groups. In isolation, your weaknesses don't just hold you back, they actively kill you. Consider medical emergencies specifically. A heart attack, acute infection, poisoning, or severe trauma requires immediate knowledge and decision-making. You're alone and having chest pain. Is it a heart attack or anxiety? Are you experiencing sepsis or normal post-injury inflammation? You're guessing, and you're guessing while your judgment is impaired by pain and fear. A trained person with a second opinion, even if they're not a doctor, dramatically increases your survival odds. With 2 people, one can keep the patient stable while the other gathers supplies or creates a more secure shelter. With one person having both jobs, you're choosing which critical task to neglect. But here's where preppers make the opposite mistake. They form survival groups that are actually death pacts disguised as mutual aid agreements. Suburban families who met at a prepper convention and decided to band together because they liked each other's philosophies. Co-workers who discovered they're all into emergency preparedness and thought that commonality would translate to cohesion. Online forum members who seem cool and talk a good game but have never actually stress tested their relationships. These groups have fatal flaws baked into their formation. The social psychology of group collapse. When resources become scarce, groups fragment along predictable fault lines that researchers have identified repeatedly in disaster studies. First goes trust. People start internally accounting for who's contributing versus who's consuming. Your accountant friend hasn't contributed in 3 days because he has no practical skills. Your electrician has been working non-stop. Resentment builds. Then goes ideology. Different people have fundamentally different visions of what survival means and how resources should be allocated. Does the group prioritize children's needs above all else, or do they trust that everyone can handle equal rationing? Then comes the final fracture. People revert to their smallest in-group, usually blood family. Your survival group of 12 becomes 3 competing families in week 2, parents with kids versus single people versus extended family. And by week 3, someone's dead over a disagreement about water rationing or medication distribution. The Stanford prison experiment showed how fast civilized people become monsters when given power and stress. Milgram's obedience experiments proved people will hurt others if they feel they have permission and aren't personally witnessing the harm. And the Donner Party demonstrated what happens when a desperate group runs out of food. They didn't all hold hands and starve together while singing hymns. They murdered each other, they ate each other, they clawed at each other over scraps. Groups without proper structure don't become cooperative communes, they become Lord of the Flies with better equipment and more efficient methods of violence. Even historically stable groups can collapse under survival pressure. The Andes plane crash survivors eventually resorted to cannibalism. The survivors of the Jamestown colony engaged in organized murder to secure resources. Rationally planned communities designed around cooperation fell apart. The variable isn't noble intent, the variable is structure, clear protocols, and tested relationships. Who should be in your cell? Blood relations or people you've known for minimum 5 years under stress conditions. Not preppers you met online, not your co-workers who seem cool, not fellow forum members with impressive resumes, people who've actually proven themselves when things got hard. You've seen them handle real difficulty, illness, loss, financial crisis, job loss, parenting challenges. You know not just what they say they'd do, but what they actually do when stressed. The vetting process is ruthless. Have they handled real emergencies? Not theoretical, I'd be good in a crisis bullshit, actual documented behavior when things went wrong. Do you have stories of their actions, not their philosophies? Did they help during hurricanes or house fires? Or did they lose their minds and become burdens? Did they help family members through medical crises? Or did they disappear? Do they have skills that complement yours, not duplicate them? 5 hunters and no mechanic is a balanced cell. 5 hunters and you're wasting redundancy. Can they follow orders when necessary and give orders when required? The person who can never take orders becomes a liability. The person who can never give them becomes a bottleneck. Have they demonstrated resource management, not hoarding, not wasteful behavior, but reasonable stewardship? The person who hoards resources will steal from the group. The person who's wasteful will squander everything. One practical way to vet: propose a survival scenario and watch their thinking. Not a debate, actual scenario-based discussion. Present a problem. We've got 3 weeks of food for 4 people, but a 5th person shows up sick and needs high-calorie nutrition. What do we do? Watch how they reason through it. Do they immediately jump to including the person or excluding them? Do they suggest solutions or just state positions? Do they ask clarifying questions or assume facts? The way someone reasons about problems in the abstract predicts how they'll reason about problems when they're hungry and scared. Each cell member needs specialized roles with backup competencies: a medical specialist who can also hunt, a mechanic who understands trauma care, a communications expert who can forage, a security specialist who can repair equipment. You're building redundancy without overlap. Each person has a core responsibility area and a secondary capability that overlaps with someone else's primary responsibility. Why structure roles this way? Because when someone dies, and someone will die, you don't lose a critical capability entirely. Your medic gets killed, but your mechanic has enough medical training to keep people alive until someone finds additional resources or skills. Your security person gets injured, but your communications expert can handle basic defense. You're building in shock absorbers. The redundancy also builds confidence. People know that if they can't perform, someone else can cover. This reduces hoarding and increases openness because people aren't terrified that their unique skill is what's keeping them alive. Establish clear leadership protocols before the crisis. Not democracy, that's 3 wolves and a sheep voting on dinner, and when resources are scarce, the sheep loses every time. Not dictatorship, that breeds resentment and sabotage, where people follow orders outwardly but undermine decisions secretly. The answer is situational leadership based on expertise. Medical emergency? The medic leads. The others follow their instructions because medical care is urgent and mistakes are fatal. Combat situation or security threat. Security specialist has authority. Mechanical failure affecting critical systems. Mechanic makes the calls. Everyone trains in everyone else's specialty at basic level so they can support and understand, but experts lead their domains. Create resource pooling agreements in writing, notarized, witnessed. Who's contributing what? How resources get distributed? What happens if someone wants to leave? What happens if someone dies? Sounds paranoid? It's insurance against the inevitable conflicts that emerge when people are scared and supplies are short. Having the agreement doesn't prevent the argument. Having the agreement prevents the argument that gets someone killed. This isn't just legal protection, though in pre-collapse society it is. It's psychological protection. Having a written, witnessed agreement means you're not making moral judgments mid-crisis about whether someone deserves more food or whether they've contributed enough. You follow the protocol. This removes emotion from decisions that need to stay rational. Practice isolation training together, not camping trips, actual stress testing. Cut yourselves off from outside contact for 72 hours. Limited food, genuinely limited, not just we're eating less than usual. Enforced watch schedules where people are actually tired. Realistic problems to solve. Water contamination, equipment failure, security concern. See who complains, who contributes, who cracks under pressure. The person who whines about discomfort during a drill will sabotage actual survival operations. Better to discover this now and remove them from your group than to find out when lives are actually on the line. You'll also discover technical gaps. The person who said they can purify water turns out not to know how. The person who claimed mechanical ability gets stuck on a simple engine repair. Better to know now and either train them or replace them. Establish connections with 3 other cells, not sharing locations or detailed information, but maintaining communication protocols for trade, intelligence sharing, and mutual aid. Think of it like cryptocurrency nodes, distributed, redundant, no single point of failure. If your cell is compromised, captured, or collapses, the other 3 survive and can help restart your cell or provide resources. If another cell needs something you can trade, ammunition for medicine, equipment for food, you both benefit without complete vulnerability. If one cell discovers a threat, raiders moving through the area, contaminated water source, they can warn the others. This network doesn't replace your cell, it extends your survival advantage beyond your immediate group. Most preppers focus so hard on their own cell that they ignore the broader network that would keep them alive. History's most successful survival communities, from resistance movements to frontier settlements, succeeded because they maintained networks, not because they were isolated cells. Remember The Walking Dead? Rick's group survives the longest, not because they're the toughest or best armed. They survive because they maintain structure, specialized roles, and ruthlessly remove people who threaten group cohesion. Shane had to go because his behavior pattern was unpredictable and destabilizing. The governor had to go because he prioritized ideology over group survival. Anyone who challenged operational security had to go. Harsh? Yes. Effective? The show ran 11 seasons because Rick understood that functional groups require hard decisions. When they tried democracy, people died. When they tried to integrate people without proper vetting, people died. When they had clear structure and harsh leadership, they survived. Or look at the movie A Quiet Place. The family survives through specialized roles, clear communication protocols, literal sign language, and absolute trust in each other's abilities. The father handles security and hunting. He's the one who scouts, who engages threats. The mother handles medical and children. She knows her job and everyone trusts her in that role. The daughter becomes their early warning system. She learns to listen for threats. Everyone has a role. Everyone trusts everyone else to execute perfectly because their lives depend on it. That's how you build a cell that survives. The difference between those examples and failed survival groups is structure. Structure isn't oppressive, it's liberating. When everyone knows their role and trusts everyone else to execute, people can relax into their specialties instead of worrying about whether people will do their jobs or whether they're being treated fairly. Going alone doesn't make you independent. It makes you an easy target with an expiration date. The strongest survival strategy isn't solitude or random collectivism. It's small, structured groups built on tested relationships, clear protocols, and complementary skills. 3 to 5 people you've genuinely stress tested, who know their roles, who trust each other, and who've established how decisions get made before the crisis forces the issue. That's the edge. That's what keeps you alive. Mistake number 3, the stockpile stupidity. Month 1, your cell is functioning well. You learned from mistake number 2. You've got your 3 core members, established roles, operational security, and you've got supplies. Beautiful, glorious supplies. 6 months of freeze-dried food, 300 gallons of water, ammunition for days, medical supplies that'd make a pharmacy jealous. You spent years acquiring this stuff, carefully rotating stock, organizing it with the precision of a German engineer on Adderall. There's just one problem. It's all in one place. Your garage, your basement, your storage unit, and it weighs approximately 4,000 pounds. Know how much you can carry? If you're in decent shape with a proper pack, maybe 60 pounds sustained over distance. Maybe. That's 1.5% of your stockpile. Congratulations, when you have to move, which you will, you're abandoning 98.5% of everything you own. Week 6. The situation at your location deteriorates. Could be fires, could be flooding, could be a hostile group that's better armed and more numerous than you anticipated. Could be a chemical spill from the industrial plant upriver that's now leaking uncontrolled toxins into the water table. Could be infrastructure collapse from cascading system failures. Doesn't matter, you need to relocate now. But your supplies are your survival, right? So you start loading. The vehicle's capacity is maxed out in 10 minutes and you've barely made a dent in the stockpile. You make a choice. Stay and defend your supplies or abandon them and run. If you stay, you're back to mistake number 1, static position, eventually overwhelmed. If you run, you're leaving behind the resources that represent years of preparation and thousands of dollars. Either way, your stockpile just became your biggest liability. The preppers who spent less time accumulating stuff and more time understanding logistics, they're already gone, mobile, alive. You're stuck making impossible choices because you confuse quantity with capability. The stockpile stupidity. Military logistics has a term for this: tonnage tyranny. Every pound of supply requires transportation, security, and management. The more you have, the less mobile you become, and mobility is survival. Napoleon lost in Russia not because he lacked supplies. He started with massive wagon trains. He lost because he couldn't move those supplies fast enough to keep pace with operational demands. His army starved surrounded by food they couldn't transport. The historical pattern repeats across every conflict. Armies that prioritize supply accumulation over operational flexibility get caught and destroyed. The physics of load bearing tells us the human body can carry 20 to 30% of body weight for extended periods before mechanical breakdown occurs. A 180-pound person can sustainably carry 40 to 50 pounds. That's your operational limit. Everything else requires vehicles, which require fuel, which requires supply lines, which requires infrastructure that no longer exists in collapse scenarios. You're operating under peacetime logistics assumptions in a wartime reality, and when your vehicle breaks down, and it will, you're suddenly faced with the brutal math of what you can actually move on foot. The psychology of accumulation is even more insidious. Preppers become hoarders, and hoarders become targets. You know what a 3-year food supply looks like from the outside? It looks like 3 years of survival to desperate people. It looks like the solution to every problem facing a hungry group. It looks like something worth killing for. Every can you stack, every case of water you store increases your profile as a resource concentration. You're not building security, you're building a target. In collapse scenarios, visible resources are like blood in the water. They attract attention from groups far larger and more desperate than you. And here's the thing about supplies. They're static, but threats are mobile. You can't eat a year's supply of food in one sitting. You can only consume it gradually, which means storing it over time, which means defending it continuously, which brings us back to the fortress fallacy. Your supplies chain you to a location, and chaining yourself to anything in a collapse scenario is suicide. The paradox is brutal. The more prepared you think you are, the less actually prepared you are. But wait, there's more stupidity. Most preppers stockpile the wrong things. They've got 50 pounds of rice, but no way to cook it without giving away their position. Know how visible smoke is? They've got antibiotics, but no knowledge of dosing or contraindications. They've got seeds for a survival garden, but zero experience growing food and no time to learn when they're already in crisis mode. They've got communication radios, but don't understand operational security and broadcast their location to anyone listening. They've got water storage, but no understanding of rotation protocols or contamination prevention. The accumulation of supplies becomes a warehouse of mistakes, not a survival advantage. The fix, the cache and carry system. Forget the warehouse, think distributed network. Remember mistake number 1, your cache locations aren't just backup positions, they're your storage solution. Smaller quantities, multiple locations, strategic placement, mobile capability. This approach transforms your supply strategy from a liability into an asset. Here's the formula. Take your total supply calculation and divide by 5. Each cache gets 20% of your total resources. No single point of failure. If you lose one cache, you lose 1/5 of your supplies, not everything. If hostile groups find one location, they don't find them all. Your redundancy becomes your resilience. Place caches based on radius of action. How far can you travel in 12 hours under crisis conditions? Not highway speeds, not ideal conditions. Worst case, on foot at night, avoiding populated areas. That's your maximum cache spacing. Each cache contains 14 days of food per person in your cell, freeze-dried, high-calorie density, minimal cooking required, water purification capacity for 2 weeks, tablets, filters, backup systems, redundancy matters, basic medical supplies, trauma kit, antibiotics, pain management, antimicrobial treatments, ammunition resupply, enough to replenish your carry load, stored in waterproof containers, tools for shelter construction, tarps, cord, basic implements, fire starting materials, and one communications device with spare batteries, kept in signal blocking container until needed. Bury them properly, not 3 feet down where any idiot with a metal detector finds them, 6 feet minimum in waterproof containers, military surplus ammo cans inside larger sealed drums, marked using GPS coordinates and physical landmarks you can identify without technology. Combine multiple verification methods, natural rock formations, distance measurements from distinctive trees or structural elements, compass bearings from known points. Practice retrieval. Time yourself. Do it in the dark. Do it in the rain. Do it with your cell under different stress conditions, because that's when you'll actually need them, and fumbling around trying to remember where you buried something while under threat gets you killed. Your personal carry is your primary survival system. 60 pounds maximum, broken down. 40% food and water, high calorie, low volume. 20% shelter and warmth, lightweight tarp, sleeping system, fire starting. 20% security, weapon, ammunition, defensive tools. 10% medical, trauma supplies, medications, hygiene. 10% tools and navigation, multi-tool, compass, maps, cordage. This loadout keeps you alive for 72 hours minimum, longer if you're competent at foraging and water sourcing. It's built on the principle that capability matters more than quantity. Train weight carrying, not hiking with a day pack, actual load bearing under stress. Work up to your target weight over months. Build the musculoskeletal adaptation your body needs. Carry weight on staircases. Carry weight while moving through rough terrain. Carry weight while fatigued, because when you're running with 60 pounds on your back, a weak core or untrained legs mean injury, and injury means death. The military understands this. They don't just hand soldiers 80-pound packs and say, good luck. They condition them over time through progressive training cycles. You need the same training. Your body is your most important piece of equipment. Develop resupply protocols. How do you access caches without compromising them? Answer: surveillance before approach. Observe for minimum 2 hours from concealed position. Approach from unexpected angles. Never direct paths. Mark caches using removable indicators you can read from a distance. Tells you if someone else found it. Maintain documentation separate from the locations themselves and rotate cache contents annually. Prevents degradation, maintains familiarity with locations, allows you to practice under non-emergency conditions. These protocols are as important as the supplies themselves. Practice emergency load shedding. Know exactly what you'd abandon from your pack under different scenarios. Being pursued? Drop everything except weapons, water, and core survival items. Medical emergency? Keep medical supplies and shelter. Ditch weight. Crossing a river under threat? Drop ammunition first. Keep water purification. It's like fighter pilots understanding their ejection sequence. You don't figure it out when the plane's on fire. The decision making has to be automatic. Remember the Fallout games again? The inventory system isn't arbitrary. It's teaching you about weight limits. Carry too much, you can't run, can't fast travel, become over-encumbered and slow. Enemies catch you, you die. The game designers understood the fundamental truth. Capability isn't about what you own, it's about what you can effectively employ when needed. Players who hoard everything die. Players who carry smart loadouts survive. Or look at 28 days later. Jim wakes up with nothing and survives the initial outbreak. The soldiers in the mansion have a massive stockpile and superior firepower, and they all die because their supplies made them static, visible, and overconfident. They became trapped by their own resources. The survivors at the end? Mobile, minimal gear, constantly moving, making decisions based on situation rather than defending an asset. That's the lesson. Your supplies aren't your security, they're your anchor, and anchors drown you when the water rises. Mistake number 4, the security theater. Month 2, you've avoided the first 3 mistakes. Impressive. You're mobile, you've got a functional cell, your supplies are distributed and accessible, you're feeling pretty tactical. You've got your AR-15 with all the accessories that made the guy at the gun store excited. You've got your plate carrier with level 4 armor. You've got night vision optics you paid 3 months salary for. You've got a weapon safe that could survive a nuclear blast. You're ready for the firefight. Here's what you don't have. Operational security. Know how everyone knows you're armed to the teeth? Because you told them. Not deliberately. You're smarter than that. But your neighbor saw you loading equipment into your truck at 3 a.m. Your coworker noticed you checking survival forums on your lunch break. Your extended family knows you're into prepping because you couldn't resist explaining why their disaster plans are inadequate at Thanksgiving dinner 3 years ago. Your social media has posts from 2019 about Second Amendment rights and self-sufficiency. The digital breadcrumbs are everywhere. LinkedIn recommendations from preppers you met at conferences, likes on survival content, your browsing history if anyone with access to your devices ever checked it. Week 9. A group shows up. Not at your bunker, you abandoned that. Not at your primary cache, you were smart about concealing it. They show up at your sister's house. The sister who isn't prepped, who isn't armed, who has your childhood photos on her Facebook page and whose location is public knowledge. They ask her, politely at first, if she knows where you might be. They explain that they're not bad people, they just need help, they have kids. Surely her brother would want to help kids, right? She doesn't know where your caches are, but she knows the general area you talked about. She knows you have supplies, she knows you're armed. And when they start getting less polite, when they imply things about her safety, about her kids' safety, she tells them everything she knows. Not because she's weak, because she's a normal human being who isn't equipped for interrogation under duress. She never had the training, never had the psychological preparation, never expected this outcome. And just like that, your security is compromised not by a tactical failure, but by a social engineering success you enabled years ago through careless conversations and oversharing. The security theater. Here's what action movies taught you. Firefights are winnable if you have better guns and better aim. Here's what reality teaches. Firefights are catastrophic regardless of who wins. Every time you discharge a weapon, you announce your position to everyone within a mile. Suppressed weapons aren't silent, they're just slightly quieter and they still broadcast your location to anyone with a radio or trained ears. That muzzle flash at night, visible for thousands of yards, a beacon to anyone looking. That gunpowder smell? Distinctive and traceable, lingering in the air for blocks. The sound of empty brass hitting the ground. A calling card for anyone who knows what combat sounds like. A giveaway of your weapon type and approximate position. The military doctrine is clear. Avoid contact whenever possible because contact equals casualties and resource expenditure you can't afford. Special operations forces spend months planning missions specifically to minimize engagement and exit risks. You know what they don't do? Stand and fight fair battles or engage in sustained firefights. They use overwhelming force, intelligence advantages, or they don't engage at all. You, with your AR-15 and 2-day tactical course, are not a special operations force. You're a liability with a weapon, overestimating your capabilities and underestimating the cost of being wrong. Let's talk about the physics of ballistics and tactics. That plate carrier protecting your chest doesn't cover your arms, legs, pelvis, or head. A single femoral artery hit, which your armor doesn't protect, and you've got 90 seconds before you bleed out. 90 seconds to apply a tourniquet, identify the bleeding source, and stay conscious. Your AR-15 with its effective range of 500 yards. Useless when someone with a hunting rifle engages you from 800 yards away because they don't need tactical gear. They need patience, familiarity with their weapon, and a good scope. Your night vision runs on batteries that will be gone in 3 months, and the enemy doesn't need night vision. They just need to wait for you to move during daylight or use thermal detection methods you don't have countermeasures for. The psychology of combat is even worse than the physics. First time you shoot at a human being, not a paper target, a living person, your hit probability drops by 50% or more. Combat stress creates tunnel vision, auditory exclusion, and fine motor skill degradation. Your hands shake. Your heart rate spikes to 175 plus beats per minute. You forget your training. Your breathing becomes shallow and rapid. Professional soldiers with years of conditioning and multiple deployments still experience this. You, with your weekend range time and video game familiarity with tactics, will experience it worse. And if you survive your first firefight, you've got PTSD to look forward to, which will degrade your decision-making, sleep quality, and ability to function for months or years. Combat changes people in ways most civilians can't anticipate. But the real security failure isn't tactical, it's operational. OPSEC, operational security, the concept preppers love to talk about and consistently violate. You know why intelligence agencies are effective? Not because they have better weapons, because they understand that information security determines survival. Every piece of information you leak, every person who knows your capabilities, every digital footprint you leave, every pattern you establish is a vulnerability that can be exploited by someone with time and motivation. The fix, Ghost Protocol. You need to become invisible before the crisis, and you need to understand that your weapons are your last resort, not your primary defense. Security is about not being found, not about winning fights after you're found. Prevention is infinitely superior to response. Immediate information control. Right now, today, audit every person who knows about your preparations. Family, friends, co-workers, acquaintances, neighbors, online contacts. Make a list. That's your vulnerability map. Every person on that list is a potential information leak, either willing or under duress. You can't undo their knowledge, but you can mitigate it by giving them false information going forward. Casually mention you gave up prepping, too expensive and too paranoid. Show them you sold your generator. Let them see you being unprepared, struggling financially, not special in any way. When the crisis hits, they won't think of you as a resource. They'll think of you as another victim just trying to survive like everyone else. Scrub your digital footprint aggressively. Delete or privatize social media posts about preparedness, weapons, supplies, and self-sufficiency. Remove yourself from prepper forums using identifiable information. Clear your Amazon purchase history if possible, or at least intersperse it with completely mundane items to obscure patterns. Buy supplies with cash when feasible, not credit cards that create permanent transaction records. Assume every digital action is logged forever, because it is, and those databases will be accessible to whoever has power after the collapse. If you can't buy with cash, use gift cards purchased with cash. Rotate retailers so no single location has a pattern of your purchases. Create cover stories for your activities that hold up to casual scrutiny. Why are you driving to rural areas? Hiking, photography, visiting historical sites, geocaching. Why do you have camping gear? Weekend recreation and family bonding. Why do you know first aid? Workplace requirement, not survivalism training. Why are you interested in water purification? You read an article about contamination concerns. Every aspect of your preparation needs a mundane explanation that doesn't scream, "I'm prepared for the apocalypse." Normal is invisible, exceptional is a target. Your weapons loadout, one primary weapon, proficiency level, minimum 1,000 rounds fired, regular training to maintain skills, not a collection, one weapon you know inside and out, can field strip blindfolded, can troubleshoot without thinking. Suppressed if possible, because every engagement you can make quieter increases survivability and reduces detection radius. One backup weapon, different platform, concealed carry capable, kept separate from primary. Ammunition, 500 rounds for primary weapon distributed across your person and caches, not carried all at once because weight, distribution, and redundancy matter. That's it. More weapons mean more maintenance, more weight, more things to fail, more choices to make under stress, more indicators of your capabilities to anyone who searches your position. Combat avoidance tactics. Travel at dawn and dusk when light conditions favor concealment and visibility is ambiguous. Avoid roads and trails where ambushes are easiest to set and most effective. Use terrain for cover, ridgelines, tree lines, water features that mask sound and conceal movement. Move slowly. Speed creates noise and visibility. When you must cross open areas, observe for minimum 30 minutes first. watching for patterns, movement, and threats. Trust your instincts. If a situation feels wrong, it is wrong, and ego isn't worth your life. Your survival instinct is usually more accurate than your rational analysis. Establish early warning systems at temporary positions, tripwires with noisemakers, cans, bells, anything that alerts without looking sophisticated, disturbed ground patterns that show if someone approached, false trails that lead away from your actual position. These don't stop threats, they give you warning to avoid engagement by leaving before contact occurs. This is the goal. Detection and exfiltration before fighting is necessary. Create disinformation about your capabilities. If you must interact with others, appear less capable than you are, limp slightly, complain about rationing and food shortages, show them empty supply bags, wear worn clothing, people attack valuable targets, not desperate refugees with nothing worth taking. The best security is looking like you're not worth the ammunition, not worth the risk, not worth the effort. Remember No Country for Old Men? Llewellyn Moss finds the money and thinks his rifle will protect him from Anton Chigurh, but Chigurh tracks him through a chain of small information leaks, motel receipts, phone calls, pattern predictability, the trail of bodies and witnesses. Moss had the weapons and some skill. Chigurh had the operational security, the patience, the intelligence network, and the psychological understanding of his prey. Guess who survived? Your guns don't matter if someone with better intelligence knows where you sleep, where you eat, and what time you're vulnerable. Or look at The Hunted with Tommy Lee Jones. Aaron Hallam is a trained killer with combat skills far superior to most threats he'd encounter. He still gets captured because he violated information security. He created patterns. He stayed in one area too long. He underestimated how much his trainer understood about his psychology and decision-making. Skills are worthless when someone knows where and when to find you, understands your thinking, and has time to plan accordingly. Practice gray man techniques now, before the crisis hits. Go to public places and consciously be forgettable. No distinctive clothing, no eye contact that's memorable, no conversations that reveal information, no behaviors that stand out. Blend, become background. This is your primary survival skill, not marksmanship or tactical knowledge. Can people describe you 5 minutes after talking to you? If yes, you're too distinctive. Build intelligence gathering capability. Know who in your area has skills, supplies, or desperation levels that make them threats or opportunities. Not for exploitation, for awareness and threat assessment. The guy 3 streets over who was a combat vet, he's thinking the same things you are and he's more experienced. Better to know he exists and avoid conflict than to stumble into a confrontation. The family that's struggling financially, when supplies run short, they'll remember anyone who seemed comfortable or had access to resources. The gang-affiliated individuals in your area, they'll organize resource gathering faster than isolated individuals. Your security isn't about how many guns you own, it's about how few people know you exist.